This is your Chargers linebacker, Daiyan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. Today's show, of course, will be brought to you by BetOnline, Charger Bulls Family, and Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, is it football season yet?
Yeah, I think so.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And
I refuse.
No.
Is it like the 5 o'clock somewhere? Like it's football season somewhere?
It's like what you want it to be. You know, you want happy hour for the NFL.
You want to be able to drink while you're working,
here.
but you just can't.
You just can't do it. I don't know how to push this DeLorean any faster to 88 miles an hour and just get us to just get me to at least training camp. Give me to at least training camp, and then I will know that we're like finally back in the thick of things. But no, hence it is June. Still, it was May for the longest time. Now it is June. Get prepared for the drolls of the NFL football season. But in order to keep us occupied with Chargers-related football topics, Dan and I actually have a fun one. Dan brought this subject matter up that I thought was good and that needed to be talked about. And I don't think it's too early enough to start having these conversations whatsoever. But we're going to be talking about breakout candidates for as far as players that are going to possibly have breakout seasons that Dan and I think so. We've got each of our own individual lists, not that we do not agree on this entire comprehensive list because we do. And it should be a nice conversation. So, and take this whatever you will, whether it's players that are going to or that need to have a breakout season. You could be the judge of that. And I'm sure that your guys' list is going to vary from ours based on how your whole perception is about this. But Dan, before we get into it, obviously, how are you, sir? I'm looking forward to this one.
I'm looking forward to this one. Really excited. I think this is a pivotal year for a lot of people, as well as players, but also for the team. And for the team to succeed, they're going to have to be some breakout candidates that perform this year that maybe either weren't on the team last year who need to perform, or were on the team last year who did not perform or need to take the next step in their career, or else either the team does not succeed or they are no longer on the team, point blank. So exciting one, a fun one, an important one. One of us will be able to we'll both be able to go back and look at this later and see like which one of these guys actually did or did not have a breakout season. And we'll be able to kind of snap the line to, are they still on the team? Did the team succeed? Were we correct? Or most likely, were we incorrect? But super fun. Right. Excited to be on the show. Got a big week for all of you guys. In the comments, let us know, who do you think is the most prime for a breakout season on this Chargers team? Who is the most prime Chargers player to have a breakout season in 2023? Jake, before we get into it, pay the bills. Over or under shows we're going to have this week? I'm going to go over under 2.5.
Yeah, I'll go over on that. It's Monday. It's a good shot for us to go over on that one. Sounds like a pretty good schedule plan thing that is possible potentially happening.
Things happening. So
let's go over quite all of that. Absolutely. So, but before we get started with our breakout candidates list, I want to remind everybody that BetOnline remains your number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season. Always the fastest and easiest way to get all of your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your very own home. Get into the action today, so head on over to the website betonline.ag or use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use that promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Okay, so Jake, as we get started, let's discuss first the definition of breakout season, because what makes this a little difficult, I think, for example, you and I were talking about a little bit before, like, oh, Joey Bosa could have a breakout season, and like, sure, like year over year, statistics wise, yes, it'd be a breakout season. Like JC Jackson, sure, could have a breakout season year over year. But in terms of like player who was not great or was not who we thought they were, and then all of a sudden is who we thought they were or exceeds that, that's a breakout season. So like when you look at the list that we have here, look at it through that lens. Players that either are going to far outperform what they did last year or are going to be much better than they did last year. Not who was hurt and then now back. Like that's a different story. So Jake, I think this is going to be an interesting time for this Los Angeles Chargers team. And there's going to be a lot of common threads as we go through these guys that we talk about. Number one, and this might be kind of I don't think this is a hot take, but my first player in the breakout candidates, number 10, the gunslinger himself, Justin Herbert. Now, folks who are watching, listening, people are like, oh my gosh, how could you say he's having a breakout season in 2023? The guy was nails in 2022. He's been great since he was a rookie. Sure, I agree. I think you are wildly underrating how important some of these factors are for why I believe Justin Herbert is going to have a breakout season in 2023. Let me remind you, Justin Herbert was hurt, but still played for most of the season. In those 17 games that he started, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, almost 4,800 yards. So 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Not bad. Four game-winning drives. Excuse me, 4 fourth-quarter comebacks, 5 game-winning drives, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Now, as you kind of look into this a little bit, Jake, have you ever heard of the term failed completion? I looked up this today, and I thought this was fascinating. So, for those who do not know, failed completion is any completed pass that fails to gain 45% of the time, 45% of the needed yards on first down, fails to gain 60% on second down, or 100% on third down. So basically, it's the plays that are kind of dump off, kind of, rip cord, just it didn't really work, broken down. Sure, it's a completion, but it's a failed play. So think of like how many times Justin Herbert dumped it off to Austin Eckler. Jake, in 2022, Justin Herbert was on pace to break the single season record held by Joe Flacco, which has been standing for, I think, 6 years now. Didn't end up doing it, but I know he had 17 games to do it. Almost did it, but led the league last year, Jake, in failed completions, essentially dump off city. He led the league with 142. Tom Brady had 130. Kirk Cousins at 112. Geno Smith, number 4 at 105. Guys like Joe Burrow way down at 99. Trevor Lawrence, 96. So Justin Herbert, in context, had almost 50 more than Trevor Lawrence in this 2022 episode. So why? Obviously, Justin Herbert wasn't healthy. Obviously, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen were unhealthy. Offensive line in shambles for most of the season. Corey Linsley missed some time. Rashawn Slater basically out for the year. You had a rookie offensive line who held his own on the left tackle. Also had a rookie offensive line in Zion Johnson, but had no running game that was really effective, that kept anybody on their heels. Then you add Kellen Moore for the offensive creativity. You add Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis. You add a healthy Rashawn Slater. Arguably, and not even arguably, this is the best offensive line Justin Herbert has ever had. You add Justin Herbert having a healthy bill of health. Finally, this year, Mike and Keenan both back. You get Darius Davis and Quentin Johnston back, both as kind of an insurance policy, as well as enabling them to throw it down the field, which you've all begged for. I'm incredibly bullish on this run game. We've talked about how important that is. 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions in 2022. He could have 10 more touchdowns this year. I could totally see 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Average depth of target probably goes up many yards. And he probably blows past 5,000 yards. Breakout candidate. My number one for the Chargers. MVP candidate as well. Justin Herbert.
Dan, I don't think that this is far-fetched at all. And when you compound all of those facts that you just did into this argument, for what Justin Herbert has done since he's come on the scene has obviously been nothing but remarkable, for even under the circumstances of being injured last year. His first 3 seasons, what he's accomplished statistically is ridiculous. But when you look at now what he has from maybe some things that we would have considered hindered him over the past 2 years, whether we're talking coaching, whether we're talking lack of stability at offensive line, at coordinator, whatever it is that you want to call it. And when you add in a offensive coordinator, the likes of Kellen Moore, with the resume that he has put on display during his time in Dallas, and what we believe that he is going to implement, as opposed to what we've seen from this Chargers offense the last couple of years, combine that with a new wide receiving core with a couple extra weapons there. Obviously, health has a lot to do with it. As you mentioned, one of the better offensive lines that he has had since he has been with this team. It's hard not to believe that an injured Justin Herbert, who put up those stats last year, that we're not going to see possibly the best version of Justin Herbert this year. And you talk about that with the overall scheme, pushing the ball downfield more, most likely probably going to have a much better running game to complement him, which is going to open up the playbook so much more for this offense. It's not far-fetched at all. Not at all.
Now, we didn't even talk about the possibility of what if this defense is better. So, transition, Jake. Let's talk about your number one. He does play on defense.
He does play on defense. That's Asante Samuel Jr. And there's a number of reasons why I believe that he is perfect for this list, and he's already been very, very impressive since he came into the league 2 years ago as a rookie. We already knew what we were seeing from him right from the get-go. Obviously, he built upon his success in his rookie year last year, having much better stats. Still was not complete lights out, but I thought he definitely improved as a starter, started more games his second season when they came around, improved his solo tackling numbers, improved his, I felt like he was around the ball more. And obviously that was capped off by a 3 interception performance in that Jacksonville unfortunate playoff loss that we saw. But for him to come out like that, had 2 interceptions during the regular season, but they come out and ball like that in a playoff game when the team really needed people to show up, he was one of the brightest stars from that.
Can you imagine what the storyline would be on Asante Samuel Jr. if they won that game?
Just simply they won that game. And even if the Chargers ended up making a playoff exit the week after that, it would have just been such a great thing for him. It was a great spotlight for him to have a game like that. And it just is so unfortunate that it ended up being wasted by the Chargers failing to win that game. Now, a couple of reasons why I think that you're going to see an even better version of Asante Samuel Jr. this year, Dan, much like in the breath of Justin Herbert, is because of the coaching. Look at this coaching staff now with Darius Davis, former secondary coach. Donatel now is the secondary coach of this unit, bumped up to the permanent coach for that. Obviously, the Chargers coveted both of them. They did not want to let them both get away. And then you bring in an assistant secondary coach for this team now. So you have secondary coaches at a lot of different levels that are made up of this team. I think with this cornerback group in general, more specifically Asante Samuel Jr., I think when you have Darius Davis at the helm and from someone who knows what he is capable of, and obviously the timetable still looks good for one J.C. Jackson to come back and how they may rotate this cornerback group between him, Asante, Jasir Taylor, Michael Davis. Who knows what that combination is going to look like. But when you have a coach, former coordinator that knew firsthand the type of baller that he is, I can only imagine how Darius Davis is going to want to play Asante Samuel Jr. this year. I'm very excited about it. I think he's going to be better. Normally for cornerbacks, you get the best years out of them in years 3 or 4. You saw it with Michael Davis. Even though he was with the team since 2017, he didn't become a starter until 2019. And then 3 years later, we got one of the better years out of him. Normally with cornerbacks, this is the time where you really want to see it. And even from a standpoint of Asante Samuel Jr. being a second-round pick, I think this is the prime year for him to say, like, okay, if we're going to set that next contract up for him down the line, this would be the year that I would predict that he wants to cash in on that.
Yep. And something that we're not talking about, we're not seeing really, is, the importance of the J.C. Jackson return and how that links to the Jasir Taylor pressure, if you will. Without J.C. Jackson on the field, Asante Samuel Jr. becomes CB 1 or 2. and then you have Jazir Taylor playing in the slot, and that's a lot of risk. There's a lot of pressure on a second-year player who has never started like that. J.C. Jackson's healthy. Asante Samuel Jr. could possibly be your slot guy. Jazir Taylor being a possible backup chess piece. Hello. Then all of the worry we had about, oh my gosh, Jazir Taylor, what about Bryce Cat? Like, that's all moot. Sans a possible injury, but like that's life. So, and if Asante Samuel Jr. can be that and allow him to use his instincts inside, breakout season, here we come. Jake, next one. This is a name that you and I both were very high on when he came out of A&M. We're talking about running back Isaiah Spiller. Fans who just became fans of this team are like, who? Never saw him last year. Yeah, I know. Me neither. Jake, he had just 18 rushing attempts last year. Basically was like a ghost throughout the entire year. And, you know, there were so many things that plagued Isaiah Spiller and honestly the running game in total last year. You know, obviously the health of the offensive line was a big deal. Health of wide receiver. You know, Keenan Allen's one of the best blocking wide receivers in the league. Health of tight end was an issue. You know, the running scheme behind Joe Lombardi was stagnant at best. Isaiah Spiller was the youngest player in the NFL, and I think just needed time to kind of fill in and fill out. Didn't get the reps, didn't get opportunities throughout the season or preseason really to do much of anything. And so this is kind of like essentially after a redshirt year, this is now prime RB2 time for Isaiah Spiller. And then you look at this year, you know, what could possibly help him this year and what could kind of infuse and accelerate that breakout season. You heard Kellen Moore, you heard Rashawn Slater talk about kind of that simplified scheme, which I think will benefit the offensive line and the running game specifically. Offensive line is healthy. You got that rushing philosophy with that like Zeke Pollard type role. Imagine that with that kind of an Eckler Isaiah Spiller possibility. Full offseason season under his belt to kind of prepare, have added experience, go through the reps, understanding playbook and roles, assignments. In my opinion, Isaiah Spiller is like literally the definition of a breakout candidate. And I think he will have a breakout season 2023. Now, look, this is all moot if they go out and sign like, you know, a Zeke Elliott, which I think is less likely than likely. But if he is the guy who they're trying to kind of go through along with that, with Josh Kelly, I think this is his season. Again, he's the only running back on the roster after the season is over. You don't think they want to kind of see what they got? RB2, Isaiah Spiller, my guy.
It's really hard not to think the arrow just can't go up for a guy like Isaiah Spiller after just, like you said, for whatever reason or another, we did not see him as much as we probably should have. For when the Chargers made the selection of him, he was the 9th running back taken in the 2022 NFL draft, was selected in the 4th round. And a lot of people thought just because of his makeup that there was going to be a legit competition between him and Joshua Kelly last season for who was going to take over those RB2 duties behind Austin Eckler. And unfortunately, for whatever reason or another, there was a combination of Larry Roundtree, Sony Michel, Joshua Kelly that just, for whatever reason or another, was ranked higher or utilized more than Isaiah Spiller. And wherever we got these explanations of why Isaiah Spiller was not playing last year, they were saying it was camp competition. And again, dumbfounded as we may seem, however this math works, 2 + 2 did not equal 4 in this circumstance. It just didn't make sense.
It equal 3.
It didn't make sense for why Isaiah Spiller in his rookie season was just not seeing the field that much. So now when you take it and you look at it like this, you know Larry Roundtree is no longer with this team. This is strictly going to be a competition now solely between Isaiah Spiller and Joshua Kelly. Again, you have to add in the aspects of Kellen Moore here and look what he did with Zeke Elliott and with Tony Pollard in Dallas. I think he is going to have this running back unit. Just get away from Isaiah Spiller. This running back unit in general, I think, is going to be utilized to a much fuller extent than what it was utilized last year. So I think this is a candidate that a lot of people would immediately think of if they wanted to think of breakout candidates for this season.
All right, Jake, moving on to the next one. Your guy, your number 2. Let's talk about him.
Daiyan Johnson. To pair with the likelihood that Isaiah Spiller would have a breakout year, number 77 is going to be a big reason for that possibly happening. And now when we have talked about this, we were talking about Zion and Rashawn Slater gushing about the fact that Zion was coming over to the left side this upcoming season, coming to his natural position that he played in college. And when you look at Zion's rookie season, wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. It was middle of the road, but even PFF decided to put him. Yeah, PFF put him on their all rookie team for last year. So as far as offensive guards goes for rookies, he was definitely at the top of that list. Nope. And yes, he wasn't flawless. He wasn't perfect. He didn't have a Rashawn Slater rookie season, but in all argument, not that many people have a rookie season in the way of Rashawn Slater does. So that's a very finite class that you're talking about in that circumstance. But I think Daiyan Johnson, not just from his talent getting better individually this season, it's when you put him in between Rashawn Slater and Corey Linsley that I think is going to make him better. This was the same argument that we would have been saying for Matt Filer if he was still in this position. Matt Filer was a much different player when Rashawn Slater was playing next to him. When Rashawn Slater went down with an injury, his play suffered a little bit. So having Zion now plugged in between just a stud of a left tackle, a veteran at center, and with someone of Daiyan Johnson's capabilities, and you've even heard Kellen Moore talk about it, that the left side of this offensive line for the Chargers is going to be a position of strength for them. They are going to put a lot of weight behind those 3 individuals. And Daiyan Johnson, I think, is going to benefit that, not just from playing behind these players, not just for him having a second year under his belt, but obviously from coaching as well. So I think a lot of weight is being put into this left side of the line for good reason, whether it's for Justin Herbert's sake or this running game's sake. But I think you're going to see Daiyan Johnson make a huge leap from even the decent season that he had as a rookie.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I'm excited to see what that side of the line looks like this year with kind of the pairing with the roster as well as with the scheme. Those two combination, we all know, like this Chargers offense, especially the running game, has just not been good. And, not to let the cat out of the bag, but we're going to be doing an episode soon on things that need to change that have been going on for far too long. That's one of them. And I think this year you're going to see it. Daiyan Johnson, I love your pick. No argument from me. Jake, next one for me. This name might surprise people, but I'm going to go with it. Darius Davis. First time we're mentioning a rookie this year. Darius Davis, new special teams ace. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, and that's fine. But I know that new rule change about having to, anywhere they do a fair catch, they move it up to 25. I don't necessarily know if that's going to affect numbers as much as people are saying. And especially when you have an elite returner, I think they're going to risk it. Sure, numbers will change a little bit, but I don't know if it's going to impact as much. And that's where Darius Davis comes into play. So, Jake, we've talked about it a while, but top return all of college football, won the Jet Award last year for best returner, had 6 return touchdowns, 5 punts, 1 kickoff return. The craziest stat for me was he had 5 punt returns in 44 attempts. Jake, that's over 10% of the time he returned a punt, it was a touchdown. Like, that's unreal. Averaging 15 yard punt. Obviously, he has special teams, but also could do kind of the wide receiver and gadget threat stuff on offense with his incredible speed, quickness. Pair him with offensive coordinator in mind of Kellen Moore, this receiving core, Justin Herbert, the opportunity he's guaranteed to get on special teams, and I would add on offense as well. Chargers fans are going to hear his name way more than they think. And John J. Carter was brought in and was looked at as like a really, really good special teams guy. John J. Carter is not Darius Davis, at least from a college prospect. Not even close. Darius Davis can run circles around John J. Carter. And that's no slight to John J. Carter. It's a different speed. So Darius Davis, my number 3 for breakout candidates for the Los Angeles Chargers.
This may seem like some low-hanging fruit to some, and I'm sure if you were going to be talking about a wide receiver rookie from TCU, that immediately we would have been thinking Quentin Johnson in the
plot twist, honorable mentions is coming soon. Don't worry.
But in Darius Davis' case, he has one of the clearest paths to making a contribution for this team, whether it's offensively or special teams. And I think, again, we always kind of talk about the coaching aspect of this team, but there was I thought this was a huge endorsement for what the Chargers knew that they needed to do from a special team standpoint. We all figured that the Chargers were going to double dip at wide receiver in the draft at some point, but a lot of people probably didn't think of Darius Davis being a name that they would hear in the 4th round. Some people considered that too early of a pick. I disagree. I thought that was the Chargers looking at what it was that they needed at that point in time.
They knew who their guy was. You
obviously didn't have DeAndre Carter coming back. You knew that. And as much improved as your special teams has gotten, what's the biggest thing that was still lacking of it was an elite returner that you needed. Now, obviously, we're still talking about Darius Davis as a rookie. But in terms of a resume like that you put together in college as a returner, Chargers go out and select one of the best college kick returners in the 4th round
ever.
I don't call that a stretch. I call that analyzing exactly what they needed on the 3rd facet of their unit, which was special teams. And I thought that was a great selection. And a lot of people are already raving about Darius Davis. You want speed on that aspect, you got that. I still think he's going to find a way to contribute on offense here and there as well. We're going to see a jet sweep succeed. I guarantee you there is going to be positive yards with a jet sweep when this individual is holding the ball and running it. I guarantee you're going to see some of those plays that he ran at TCU for it. So this is not low-hanging fruit by any means in my book. I think this is an obvious choice. I am excited to see what he is going to contribute to this special teams unit. I think Ryan Fitkin is excited about it and on how they're going to utilize him. And I'm sure Kellen Moore is going to try to find some ways to get him involved too.
100%. And, we had Tuipulotu on the show, and we had asked him right after one of his OTAs, or rookie camp, excuse me. He was on special teams and absolutely got shook and blown by someone on special teams. Guess who that was? Like, speed is different with this guy. And in terms of like the way I kind of look at it as a breakout season is like, who are you going to feel watching this team? Like when a game's over, who are you, or when the game goes on, as you're going through the game, who are going to have those impact plays that you're like, man, wasn't expecting that. Didn't have that last year. I think you're going to see a lot of them from Darius Davis. Jake, you're up.
I like that this is the picture that you choose for Otito Ogbonnia. This is great. But Otito Ogbonnia is one of my breakout candidates for this season. Obviously, when we look at what the Chargers did or lack thereof in the rush defense category last year, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. It was literally a problem from the jump. We have talked about ad nauseum on this show, as well as been talked about on other shows, about 40-yard plays that have been ripped off against this Chargers defense last year, whether that was through the air or on the ground more specifically. This is definitely a position where the Chargers knew that they needed to work on. But when you really start digging, one of the better run defenders for this team was Tito. And obviously, Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson are the starters for this unit. But I think that, especially after the Chargers have now pushed away from guys like Jerry Tillery, Christian Covington, a few other veterans that were back behind this team, there's a lot of confidence and I think a lot of weight that's going to be put on his shoulders to help anchor this running the interior defensive line, especially as it relates to the running game goes. And I think that the way that he started out for a rotational defensive lineman, especially where he was selected from UCLA last year, I thought it was very good to see how he was being utilized and how he was garnering results in the running game. So unfortunately, obviously, he went down. I can't remember specifically when it was last year, but I believe it was the same game that we ended up losing Christian Covington as well. But when he went down, even as bad as the Chargers' run defense was at that point in time, it didn't do the team any favors to lose a player like him. So I think that the Chargers, from what you've seen them do, especially from the draft standpoint, see guys like Scott Matlock, Gerard Clark, they're putting much more emphasis on improving this rush defense, and Tito is definitely going to be part of that. So I think you're going to see another step up from him. Again, I take that just from the standpoint of what he showed early on in his rookie season. Also on top of that, from the standpoint that there was so much rotation behind him, and now so many other players that have left this team, that it's now a great opportunity for him to take those reins.
He's going to be pushed. I think of all the guys we talked about so far, I think he is the one that might have the toughest time having a breakout season, not because he can't do it, but because I think the opportunity is going to be cut possibly with how deep and how fierce that competition is going to be at interior defensive line. It's unfortunate for him last year because he was coming on so strong. Started off not the greatest, but by the time you heard Brandon Staley talk about how upsetting it was that he got hurt when he was like starting to play really well. And so if that could be the starting point and he only improves from that, like absolutely. I just wonder, and I'm curious how much of an opportunity he's going to have. You know, we talk about Darius Davis having so much opportunities, like given plays just because he's going to be the guy. He's going to have to earn it being Tito. Like that's going to be a time where, we talked about it earlier, that defensive line battle is going to be gnarly. But for the Chargers, if the Chargers are looking to have a good defensive line from an interior perspective, if Tito's good, like we're in good shape as fans watching this game. Like they're going to be fine. They're going to be just fine. Jake, my number 4, and this might surprise some people. One of my favorite picks of the entire draft for the Los Angeles Chargers, not Daiyan Henley, Daiyan Henley, is my number 4 candidate for breakout season for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, people might say, oh my gosh, it's a linebacker. Oh my gosh, it's a rookie. How can you expect that? Linebackers aren't that important. They already got Eric Kendricks. Like, yeah, hear me out. There's been some noise about like hoping that Daiyan Henley can surpass Kenneth Murray. And there has been some, hopes that this coaching staff can see that and allow him to go ahead of him. In my opinion, Daiyan Henley, I think, is going to be the second leading player for this linebacking core in terms of plays played. Third round pick, Butkus Award finalist this past season at Washington State, led his team in both tackles on defense and on special teams. Has experience playing safety, defensive end, also on offense, wide receiver, even quarterback, and obviously linebacker. Has instinct, sideline to sideline speed. Awareness is off the charts. Sure tackler, which again, key, sure tackler. Chargers defense desperately needs. Given the uncertainty around Kenneth Murray Jr., they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Given the scheme that Brandon Staley runs, where Kendricks will probably be linebacker 1, obviously, but in those 2 linebacker sets that he and DA run, in my opinion, Henley seems to be poised to like immediately take over the stuff that Drew Tranquil did. Like when you look at what Drew Tranquil and Kenneth Murray did on the field, they were not the same player. They did not do the same things. Obviously, I would say that Drew Tranquil probably did everything that Kenneth Murray did better, but what their roles are very different. And it looks like Eric Kendricks is playing the role that Kenneth Murray we wish was playing, but at a better spot. Sure tackler, manning the middle, anchor, leader. That's Eric Kendricks. The guy that's all around the football field, the guy that can kind of do everything, the Swiss Army knife, the kind of the Kaiser White type, if you will, is Daiyan Henley. So with Kendricks manning the field alongside Kenneth Murray as kind of his backup, which I think will happen, Henley has the opportunity to kind of be everywhere. If his college play translates anything to what we can see in the NFL, he could be a huge piece in addition to this Chargers defense. Pairing him and his potential with what Kendricks and his potential are could bring kind of this like stability and trust to the linebacker group that's, if we're being honest, like we have not seen in years. Linebacking core as a whole has been a liability, whether it's in coverage, whether it's in tackling, whether it's pursuit, whether it's going after the quarterback. That has not been this Chargers strong suit in totality for that group. With Daiyan Henley and Eric Kendricks together, that could be changing. Daiyan Henley, breakout candidate for your Los Angeles Chargers.
It's really hard to not root for Daiyan Henley. It really is. As much as it is, and again, I totally understand it. And Dan, this is a I would even go as far as to say that this is even a bolder choice for a breakout candidate than even Darius Davis. And I say that just from the standpoint of the competition. Right. But when you look at this, I guess it's more to say, at what point does Daiyan Henley become a starter? Because and I legitimately ask this question because I relate this directly to the current situation of Kenneth Murray as it stands right now. And we, of course, have been waiting for that breakout moment for him. And so is this one of the Chargers type of move to say, like, okay, we now know that this is probably most likely going to be the long-term answer, as you said, more in that Kaiser White Swiss Army mold type for Daiyan Henley. But when does it start? When does it officially start? Because we know how much this team invested in Kenneth Murray, and they're trying to get that mold of what they were hoping that they moved up to draft in the first round from him. They believed that Eric Kendricks was going to be a part of that, bringing some of that leadership into there that would hopefully elevate his play. But my legitimate question is, when does the breakout season officially start? When does Daiyan Henley become a starter? Is it as early as in the first month of the season?
It's interesting because it directly correlates to what happens with Kenneth Murray. Because in my opinion, Kenneth Murray is like teetering on two stark different paths here. He could either going to go like the Trey Pipkins route. This is the Kenneth Murray that they drafted in the first round. Or he's going to go the Jerry Tillery route, where it's just not going to click. The team's giving him plenty of opportunities, and it just doesn't work.
That was why I asked that question. And it wasn't because I don't agree with this selection for a breakout candidate. I simply wonder, is it going to be like one of those aspects where it's like, when Kaiser White was first on this team, we saw Kaiser and we're like, God, why is this dude not playing more? And then obviously he ballooned himself into his breakout season that he had before he went off to Philly. And we saw that, and you're just kind of like, God, I wish we could have seen him play more with this team. But that's my legitimate question. Because Kenneth Murray is currently slotted, as it stands here in June, as the starter next to Eric Kendricks, when does the possibility begin for Daiyan Henley? And that was why I just wanted you to elaborate on that.
I think it's earlier than people think. And the reason why is because Daiyan Henley does all the things that Kenneth Murray has not shown that he can do in the NFL, or at least he had in college. Daiyan Henley is incredible in coverage. Kenneth Murray so far in the NFL is not. Daiyan Henley is an absolute ball hawk in college. Kenneth Murray in the NFL is not. Daiyan Henley is what the Chargers defense needs as a linebacker. And so far, Kenneth Murray is not. And he also does things that Eric Kendricks does not do, which I think will enable him to be on the field more than a Kenneth Murray. So I think it's earlier than people think. You're going to see him immediately on special teams, guarantee you that. And then I think he's going to push himself up the chart. I really do. I think before the first 4 games are over, you'll see Henley on the field a considerable amount. Well, we talked about 2 rookies. Jake, here's your opportunity to talk about a third one.
Tuipulotu.
Actually, real quick. Before we get to here, I want to kind of go through the honorable mentions before we talk about Tuli.
That's fine.
Who are some honorable mentions that people might be like, why the hell did we not talk about this guy? You know, for folks who are going to come after us, like there are certain guys who just missed this list, in my opinion. Who are those guys, if you had any, for you?
I mean, Quentin Johnston obviously comes to mind right off the bat. Everybody wants to take that aspect of big-bodied first-round pick. Why did you select him over certain other guys? You know, there were some criticisms immediately after Quentin Johnston was taken, and then within 24 hours, those kind of disappeared. And you're like, oh my God, all of this makes perfect sense for why the Chargers ended up selecting Quentin Johnston. We've all seen the highlights in the early days thus far of what he's been doing with Justin Herbert out in the field. You've seen him make some really nice moves past Asante Samuel Jr. thus far in training camp. I think the reason that he probably missed this list for us, Dan, is because much in the ways of the other rookies, when you're looking at, okay, fastest possibilities of them starting and being able to contribute. Sure. And while I definitely think that Quentin Johnston will have his moments, when you look at the rest of these options, when you still have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams as your starter, when you have Joshua Palmer, who's still improving as another wide receiver, you could still even throw in there Austin Eckler as another option that you would think of going to first with this offense before Quentin Johnston. As it stands right now, it's a fringe wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 for where Quentin Johnston is technically slated when you're thinking about the other guys in the wide receiver group. So do I think that he gets his moments? Yes. Do I think that he's just going to come in and blow the absolute doors off of this offense and have like a Justin Jefferson rookie season? No, I don't think that should be the case. I would love to be wrong on that sentence, by the way. I would absolutely love to be wrong and eat crow for a sentence like that.
Derwin James considers, just recently as today, Derwin James came out and said that he's the one who's been standing out the most. I think he said he's him.
And he's got an attitude. We talked about this on last week's show.
Could you imagine? I know this is
Derek Hensley loves him.
Imagine him being like a Justin Jefferson. Like, if he's that good. Like, how I know this is pipe dream. I'm just saying, like, imagine this Chargers roster and how much that this would benefit the Chargers roster and Justin Herbert and everyone if they found their wide receiver 1. Like,
it would definitely help. It would definitely help.
It would be lovely.
But yeah, it's more from the reasons of who's ahead of him currently as it stands on the depth chart, that I think that he's not going to go out there and blow the doors off right away and have this amazing breakout season. I think most likely for Quentin Johnston, the breakout season comes in 2024.
Yep. My honorable mentions, I think, all follow a common thread, and that is like dependencies. Quentin Johnston was on my list. Like, breakout season if one of those 2 receivers goes down. If, which honestly, given the track record, it's likely one of them will go down for a bit. Then Quentin Johnston could go off. And if he goes off, he's not going to get taken off the field. So, possibility. Another one for me, Jake. Jazeer Taylor. Like, this is kind of like a hope/need, but again, dependency. If JC Jackson is not going, then, in my opinion, it seems like Jazeer Taylor is going to have to go off and is going to have meaningful reps if they don't go out and sign someone else, if Bryce Callen doesn't come back. So, again, dependencies. Another one, we've talked about it for a while. They brought him back. Donald Parham Jr. is a possibility for breakout season. Been a couple of years now. We're like, oh, Donald Parham, this is his chance. Now he's got Kellen Moore calling plays. 2 tight end sets, big deal. Tight ends go off on Kellen Moore's system. If Donald Parham can stay healthy, again, dependency, and let's say something happens to Joe Everett. Let's say that the scheme all of a sudden changes and Donald Parham now just getting volume targets. Donald Parham could go off. So honorable mentions. Again, I think Quentin Johnston's probably like the next one on the list as far as like, if one of the guys goes down, like this could be one of those, like they never look back moments. But again, big if, we'll see. Okay. I apologize for interrupting you, Jake. Your last guy,
yes,
on your list,
Tuipulotu, who I was raving about during the pre-draft process with Dan. We have heard when we had Trevor Sikkema on this show that I'm not sure if that was the shot that he called Dan, but he talked about Tuipulotu and he said, quote, if the Chargers were able to get Tuipulotu, they are going to love him because of his versatile capabilities. And that's exactly why I think that this fit just makes so much sense when the Chargers ended up selecting him in the second round. And again, it was so weird because we all figured that the Chargers were going to target edge with that second round pick. They had to target at least one in the top 50, no matter if that was first round, second round pick. And with all the edges that were flying off the board, for some reason, we just kind of forgot that he was there.
We forgot. You and I, Jake, we were live. You and I both got sweaty. We're like, we're screwed. And for whatever reason, we just
totally forgot that he was still there. And then the Chargers end up making the selection with Tuipulotu taken in the second round for the Chargers.
We're like, oh shit.
This makes so much sense, again, from a playing time opportunity standpoint, much in the same breath as Darius Davis. Behind Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, you have Chris Rumph. And to round out this edge group as it stands right now, who knows how many they'll keep on their final 53, Carlo Kemp, Ty Shelby. That's the rest of your edge group, basically. I think that there are big plans to utilize Tuipulotu, not just from the standpoint of possibly giving a breath to either Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa, but Tuli can also rush from the interior as well. And I think Brandon Staley...
Is he immediately edge 3 at this point?
I think so. Because Chris Rumph had a great opportunity to step up in that role when Joey Bosa went down last year. And unfortunately, they just didn't get that. I thought Chris Rumph had a great preseason. And unfortunately, that just didn't end up carrying over. So I think immediately this is Tuli's edge 3 position to lose in this circumstance. But I think that he gets bumped because he has that versatility of rushing from the interior as well, much in the same kind of breath as a Morgan Fox of how you can utilize him as an interior pass rusher. I think Brandon Staley can find some packages for him to where, and this was actually a point that Daniel Popper had written about Tuli from a quote from Brandon Staley that he had actually said when Staley was talking about Tuipulotu, calling him a point of attack player, which means, as Daniel Popper talks about, that they are comfortable with utilizing him in a lot of different sets. So I think kind of like a Daiyan Henley, Swiss Army knife standpoint, but more so from the standpoint of what he can do from his versatility. The versatility standpoint, I think he's going to get every chance in the book to come in and contribute. And to put him with a defensive line and an edge group that you have with this, you saw what he did in college at a USC in his last season was damn impressive. I would love to see how he would contribute with this group of players around him.
Oh yeah, him being mentored by Mack and Bose on the outside, and then you got folks interior who I think are kind of hybrid players like him. You know, someone like a Morgan Fox. If he could become Morgan Fox as a kind of the interior presence, and then also have the edge stuff, yes, please. You know, obviously you've got Sebastian Joseph Day who can kind of help him with the mentality, help him with kind of the concepts. Yeah, if the Chargers can get edge 3 or can get Tuli, whatever he's going to be that Swiss Army knife all over the line, and he can perform and be impactful on this team, on this defense, and then you just snap back and you think about, okay, Chargers first round pick Quentin Johnston, if he balls out, holy crap. Then you look at Tuli, if he balls out. Then you look at Daiyan Henley, if he balls out. You look at Darius Davis. All of these guys have a pretty damn good shot of doing it. When you look at the full picture and the scheme and the coaching staff and the roster and salary, it's shaping up to be, again, this is June. And I don't want to overhype things, which maybe it's too late. But Tui's going to get snaps. And he's going to get a lot. So I like this pick. I think this is a good one. So that's 8 guys plus some honorable mentions that we talked about. Who are you most bullish as we wrap up the show? Who are you most bullish of all of these guys to be your pick as the one who has the breakout season in 2023?
Well, it'd be stupid of me to not side with Tuli, considering how long I have been bullish on him when we were going through all of our draft analogies. And to be that analysis. Thank you. I was the most excited for him when the Chargers ended up selecting him. Again, I just think the fit makes so much sense from Brandon Staley's scheme. I think he's going to be able to utilize him in so many different places. And truthfully, I think that he is going to get a much better shot than what people think of. I don't think that this is in the same breath of a Quentin Johnston having a Michael Davis and Keenan Allen ahead of him, much like you would say for Tuli's case. Okay, well, you can use the same exact argument for him because he has Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa right ahead of him. I don't see that in this breath. I think that he's actually going to get a lot more opportunity to contribute along this defensive line, both in the interior and on the edge. And quite frankly, the Chargers need another edge player to step up.
Staley and Ainsley are desperate to have someone out there who they can actually allow to put on the field and give Bosa or Mac a rest and not have this precipitous drop of production. And if Tuli could be that guy, it's like Christmas Eve. This is fantastic.
Yeah, so Tuli's my guy in that circumstance. If I am going to be the most bullish on somebody, it has to be Tuli.
I think the easy one for me is Justin Herbert, but I think that's not fair because I'm incredibly bullish on him, and there are many reasons why. So not being Justin Herbert, I think of the guys that I have listed, I think I might go Isaiah Spiller. And just looking at what he's starting from to this year, I think will be night and day. And I'm here for it. The young man deserves it. If we can see the Texas A&M version of Isaiah Spiller on this team, now we're cooking. This is a fun one. We had a little long today, but for good reason. Jake, anything else you want to tell the great friends before we head out of here, other than to please hit that like and subscribe button. Follow us anywhere you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever else. Anything else?
If someone has created the formula for time travel to leap us forward to the end of August, please create your time machine and allow me to be the first person on it. Because I'd like to jump to August, please.
Fair. Well, if we're talking about that type of thing, I finally saw Guardians of the Galaxy.
Good for you.
Loved it. It was great.
Fantastic. Good for you.
Also, completely off topic since probably no one's listening anymore. I also saw The Big Lebowski. First time. My wife literally looked at me afterwards and was like, what the hell did we just watch? And I was like, I can't tell you. Because it's also my first time, so I got to go watch it again. What's next on your movie watch, by the way?
So, I mean, if I will say one thing for June is a great month for movies in general.
Yeah.
We have The Flash coming out. We have The Across the Spider-Verse that just came out this past week. We got Indiana Jones at the tail end of this weekend. I actually just went out and saw The Boogeyman this past weekend. PG-13 horror movie. It's one of the more successful PG-13 horror movies that I've actually seen. Is it predictable in a few spots? Yes. Littered with jump scares? Yes. But the story works and the monster's terrifying, and I had a lot of fun with it. So, hey.
Spider-Man, was it good? Did you see it yet?
I have not seen it yet.
What?
I will probably be checking it out this week again.
That is so not like you.
It's not like me, considering the Marvel aficionado that I am. It's very not like me. So I am disappointed in myself. I have done my best to stay away from any spoilers for that. But I just keep hearing great thing after great thing about this movie, and I'm stoked about it.
All right, so the next show, we'll have to give your analysis if you've already seen it on the Spider-Verse. For Jake Hefner, you can find him at Jake D. Hefner, myself at DNW Sports. Again, hit us up on Twitter at LAC_Unleashed, Facebook, Instagram, all the likes. We'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.